Welcome back. I'm going to be making applesauce today. It's actually really simple. You need 8 to 10 apples, cinnamon, sugar, and salt. The reason why I'm not giving you all the measurements is because it depends on the size of apple and it depends on the sweetness of the apples. And the salt is for, you salt the water as you're peeling your apples to prevent browning, but you also need that salt a little bit in your apples when you go to cook them, so I'll tell you about that. It does call for 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, but again, that's to taste. So I'm gonna get started on peeling, quartering, and coring my apples. Use your slicer core for your apples. Cut it down into the quarters first, or the eighths, and then you can pretty much just peel this off with a paring knife, the skin off with a paring knife, in one swoop. Now my mom used a peeler, so I'm gonna try a peeler on this one, and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, so I've peeled several apples here, and actually, Mom, you were right. It looks like this peeler is actually quicker as long as you can get it to at the right angle. But now I really think that a vegetable peeler is the fastest. So sorry about the noise, that's my dishwasher. Now that I'm doing these videos, my dishwasher runs like twice a day, every day or more. And I'm always multitasking, so I gotta be doing, when I'm doing one thing, I gotta have something else going on. All right. And then when you get down to the end, you just keep your thumb kind of on your apple and you can peel down on the top and bottom. And then you take your slicer and voila. And then I just take and make sure that all the peel is off before I put them into that salt water. And if there's any bad spots, I cut those out too. So the normal recipe, 8 to 10 apples, Jonathan apples, half a cup of sugar, half a cup of water, teaspoon of cinnamon, and a little sprinkling of salt. Cook it on low until the apples are tender. Now, I did skip a step here. The apples are sitting in salt water. You do not rinse them. You want that salt on there. That is part of the applesauce recipe. So I'm going to strain my water off, not rinse, and put them into my pot. Now, the other thing is, at this point, I today am going to cook these on low on the stove, but normally I would put these in the slow cooker and cook them on low for 7 to 8 hours, or as long as you want, but 7 to 8 hours at least, or you can cook them on high for 3 to 4 hours. You always want to check them with a knife or a fork, and they should be fairly soft. I'm going to drain my apples and put them into the pot. Now, because I have a very sweet apple, I'm only going to put in about a quarter cup of sugar. I'm going to put in half a cup of water, but because it said 8 to 10, and I had 11 apples, I'm going to add just a little bit more water to mine. And then a sprinkling of salt, you just sprinkle with salt. And then a teaspoon of cinnamon, and this is gonna be my teaspoon of cinnamon. So you cook on low, you stir often so they don't burn because you don't have a ton of water in here. So you stir often, and then when they're soft, I will use the immersion blender on this. And then we'll let it cool and put it in jars for either the refrigerator or the freezer. Okay, now my apples have been cooking for a while and they are nice and soft, so I'm going to use my immersion blender. Still pretty hot, so but I'm gonna go ahead and blend it up and just make sure that these holes are down in the apples and everything so it doesn't splatter. Okay, my apples were all cooled, and I went ahead and used my immersion blender. Now my Grandma Duncan used a food mill, and which takes a lot longer, so she did it by hand. She'd never had an immersion blender, which is the greatest thing ever. But anyway, so this is how much, and I actually made a double batch. So I did it with 20 apples. So this was 20 apples for this. So it made 3 quarts and 2 pints. It's really good. It's pretty thin. We always used to call my Grandma Duncan's applesauce her soupy applesauce, but it's fabulous. So I'm gonna put these in the freezer. So if you notice, I did not fill these all the way to the top, because if you put them in the freezer, it will expand, and you don't want to blow the top of your lid off or break your jar in your freezer. So you wait till these are completely cooled off, and then you can put them in your freezer, but make sure you leave a couple inches on the top here for it to expand. You should do that anytime you freeze anything in a jar or a container in the freezer that is liquid. You should always leave room for it to expand a couple inches. So it's delicious. So I hope you guys try it. Enjoy. Thanks.